28. 28. That is when I decided to start my creative career. Let's talk about why it's never too late to start creating art and why you should start today. When I was a kid, I loved making art. I have such a distinct memory of drawing these massive convoluted guns with all these crazy parts going off of them. It would take hours and hours for me to draw them, but I loved every single second doing it. I loved getting sucked into it. But somewhere along the line, I lost it. I lost that spark. I ended up getting 2 degrees, thinking I had to make as much money as possible as quickly as I could. I ended up learning programming and getting a job at a okay tech company. I think I was about 24 at the time. I started late. Fast forward to 27, maybe 28 years old. I'm in a job I hate. The soul is completely sucked out of my body. I'm not doing anything creative. I'm barely working out. I'm just not in a good place. And this entire time, I felt like something was missing. I didn't realize at the time that was the need for a creative outlet, but what it felt like was empty. I just felt empty. I felt like there was something that I was supposed to be giving to the world that I wasn't doing and I wasn't fulfilling. I don't know exactly when I fell in love with 3D art, but I was always super into video games and I was always super into how things worked behind the scenes. So maybe that's the original spark. One day I decided I just had enough. So what I did was I sat down and I was like, hey, I'm a little curious about this whole 3D art thing. How do we actually do this? Right? So I hopped onto YouTube and I searched around and I found my first tutorial. It was some course about hard surface 3D modeling and we modeled like a character's weapon, like a gun, basically. It was like 3 hours long. I absolutely suffered through every second of it, but it was incredible. I was making something from scratch. I'd never felt this fulfilled in my entire life. You know, creating something from scratch that was mine, even though it was a tutorial, it was mine. I still made it. That made me more satisfied than any high-paying job that I've had. And then I did another tutorial. And then I did another. And then suddenly I was making stuff. I was really into hyper-realistic and sci-fi hard surface stuff at the time, so I was really chunking through all these courses. It was super fun. Yeah, it was a really cool time. Very simple. And then at some point I was like, you know what? I want to give this educating thing a try. I think I've learned enough. One of the very first tutorials, you can go back and look at it on my channel. I made like a giant Buster sword kind of thing, and it's like horrible. The mic quality was awful. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know how to teach. It was just like 3 hours of mess. But after that point, it was too late. I had fallen in love with it, and I had fallen in love with education. And I didn't realize this was something I always loved. At my old job, I ended up falling into an education role as well because I loved learning about topics, and then I loved sharing what I learned with other people. And I love watching other people grow based on the stuff that I've taught them. And that was it, and that sparked it. So fast forward 5 years. I'm now 33. We are coming up on 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. I ended up creating a 3D art course, which made me more money than I've ever seen in my life. I've learned all these incredible skills like editing, how to work these cameras, how to make 3D art, how to just be an artist in general, and how to live a more fulfilled life. And now we're even collaborating with all these cool artists on making courses and growing a business. I would have never done this before if it wasn't for just taking that first step. It's crazy. It's crazy that I just get to sit here and talk about art as my full-time job. I am so incredibly thankful. Now, some people that are watching this video may be thinking, okay, I'm in a similar situation, you know? So let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about just getting started. When it comes to starting late, I was coming up on my 30s when I started doing this. But in my opinion, I started exactly when I was meant to. All my life experiences, all the paths that I've been on, all the mistakes, all the failures, all the success had led me to this point. My life would be completely different if I started making art and doing this stuff when I was 14. It could be worse. My life could be worse off. Who knows? I could have crashed and burned because I wasn't ready. We don't know. So I will always say, if you are starting now, you are starting at the best possible time, because that is the time where you were supposed to start. And that's right now. One of the biggest things to take away from all of this is that art and being a creator and being creative has no age limit. Just because you started this at 14 doesn't make you a bigger creator or a smaller creator or better or worse than someone who started at 45. Because trust me, if me as a 33-year-old man go up to a 50-year-old dude or woman and say, hey, like, is it too late for me to start whatever? Is it too late for me to start painting? That 50-year-old person's gonna be like, dude, you are so young. You don't know how lucky you have it. And if that 50-year-old goes up to a 70-year-old person and says, hey, is it too late to start gardening? The 70-year-old is going to say to the 50-year-old, you have no idea how lucky you are to be so young. So I think the whole concept of starting too late, is it too late to start, is kind of bullshit in the first place. I get so many comments on my YouTube channel saying like, hey, I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm 20, I'm 22, 23. Like, it's too late. I can't believe I waited so long. It's over. It's over for me. I'm like, dude, I only have like a decade on you, and trust me, like, you're young, dude. You got so much time. It's amazing what you can accomplish in a few years. Look at me. I was 28, 33. Now where I am. If you're worried about technical skill and thinking that you aren't good enough as some of these other people who are like currently doing it, I will say that technical skill in 3D is important, but in general in art, it's not as important as you think it is. Some of the best artists out there aren't technically gifted at all. They just have a good eye, and they're able to convey the lessons that they've learned in a way that reaches and touches people. That's what art is. Art isn't necessarily about being incredibly technically talented. And plus, if you start making stuff anyway, you're gonna get better over time, right? It's your own personal journey. Everything that you've done in the past up to this point doesn't really matter. It matters in the sense that you've built this pool of experience, but it doesn't matter in the sense that all that matters is you're starting now, right? The past is the past. You're doing something now, and that's what's important. If you are starting late, I would say it's actually a benefit in a way, because you have more experience points than someone younger starting, right? You have the potential to grow faster. You know more about yourself, so you're able to communicate your art more effectively to other people. I think that's pretty special. I'm glad I started when I started, because if I started when I was 14, I would just be making slop. I'd be technically better at what I do, but I'd just be making slop anyway. So I don't know. Remember, you are on your own journey. We'll talk about this a little more later in the video, but it doesn't really matter where everyone else is, right? Or it doesn't really matter where you started and where you're ending up, right? It's art is the journey of your own soul. If you're starting at what you feel is late, you're gonna feel uncomfortable, right? You're gonna feel scared. And the main reason for that is because you are in your comfort zone, right? You've been doing things your way for a while, right? And you know what works. You know what makes you happy. You know what makes you sad. You typically avoid those sad things. You know what makes you uncomfortable. You typically avoid those things that make you uncomfortable. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from doing this stuff, because they know they're gonna have to leave their comfort zone to make art. And let's be totally honest. At first, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting, but it's also gonna suck. Every single thing you do is gonna be a challenge, right? Like if you're learning how to draw on paper, right? Like drawing simple shapes, if you haven't been practicing and doing it, dude, it's hard, man. Like, it's really hard. I did a bunch of lessons a few years ago, and like even just like making squares properly and cubes in a 3D space with like depth and perspective, it is so hard, dude. Like I spent months on it before I really got my head around it. But it is a good pain. There's nothing wrong with pushing yourself and challenging yourself with things that are worth it. The one piece of advice I will give to you is to just show up. That can be 5 minutes a day. It can be 30 minutes a day, whatever time you have. It doesn't really matter, right? You just want to get yourself used to showing up and integrating this into a part of your life. You can do it off of like pure discipline and willpower, but I find that finding your reason why you're doing this is so much more powerful. For me, I do this stuff because I want to inspire people, right? I want to grow my business. I want to improve myself as an artist. I want to learn how deep this rabbit hole of my soul goes. That's my reason, and that's what pushes me through day after day. And I think knowing where you want to be, but not knowing how you are going to get there is okay. That's fine. Most people live their day-to-day life like that. Everyone does. We're just muddling through, doing the daily work that we know needs to be done, and then hoping we land on our feet. Another thing I used to do when I had a hard time getting started was I created like a checkmark system. Every day I did 5 minutes of art. Had a little piece of paper, and I threw a little check mark down, and then I had like a big one of like, I had like 100 or so check marks going. It felt really good and really helped me get started. I think one thing with that is, if you're gonna do a system like that, do not beat yourself up if you miss a day, okay? I miss days all the time. I didn't look like a perfect checkmark system. There were pieces missing, you get sick, you go on vacation, family members need your help, whatever, it happens. That's a part of life, right? Like, art isn't really supposed to take over your life. It's supposed to enhance it. It's supposed to enhance your life. So as a rule of thumb for me, I would allow myself to miss a day, but I would never allow myself to miss a second day. So no two X's in a row, right? That's how I would do it. Whatever works for you, really, but that worked for me. Now, during this phase, it's going to be hard, but I do want to say that it's okay to be scared. You are going to be constantly all day bashing your head against a wall. That's what it's going to feel like. You're going to have a good day where you feel like you made something pretty great and you really got it out there, and you're going to have really bad days where you feel like you didn't get anything done. You didn't really learn anything. But all that means you're just heading in the right direction, right? If you're feeling friction in your life with something that you are trying to do, it means you're learning, right? You're bumping up on that edge of what you know, right? And pushing through that wall to make the wall in your whatever bigger, your sphere of knowledge bigger, is hard, and it takes a lot of pushing. Now, being a little older, you probably already know that, which is great. And that's what I mean when I say being older is a bit of an advantage. Maybe you know how to work hard for things. Maybe you know that things are going to take a little more work. Again, that's why I'm glad I didn't start when I was 14, because I probably would have given it 110% for a week, thought it was impossible, and then maybe scared me off for the rest of my life. So remember, when you're leaving your comfort zone, this is supposed to be hard, okay? Especially at the beginning, it's supposed to be hard, and that is completely okay. It will get easier, but that's part of the artistic journey, right? If you're not challenging yourself and making yourself think in different ways and exploring yourself more and keeping things fresh, trying new stuff, new technology, why are you making art, right? Why are you doing it? Just be kind to yourself, okay? Just be kind to yourself. Work on it every day, and you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. There's a pretty common saying: comparison is the thief of joy. Meaning, if you think you're someone that's getting into art a little later, you might be tempted to go on Twitter and compare yourself to the 14-year-old prodigy that's already hired and working in an anime studio, or your 18-year-old little cousin who's already been accepted into fine art school. But what I really want to get across is that sort of thinking and that sort of comparison is completely pointless. And I think social media does have a lot to blame when it comes to this. I don't think the human brain was really built to see so many faces in a day, right? If you're on social media scrolling for an hour, you're going to see 1,000 or so artists, right? I don't think the human brain is used to comprehending that much. It's completely overwhelming. And I think it's completely understandable that when people go on social media and they see all these incredible, literally thousands of incredibly talented artists, it might feel like the world is filled with these people. And it is to an extent, but this notion of pure talent and whatever is not as prevalent as you think. Comparison is the thief of joy big time. I've struggled with this for a while. I think for a while it was one of the main things that stopped me from getting out there and making stuff. Oh, I'm not going to be as good as this person, or I can never be as talented as this guy who's been working in the industry for 30 years. Come on. All of those thoughts and being exposed to that all the time really does create a sort of paralysis that's hard to escape from. But I personally found a way out of it. And for me, that was to really reframe the way that I looked at social media. I used to post YouTube videos and art and whatever, all this stuff online to kind of compete with other people, thinking I've made this is better than you, this is better than everyone else, right? Now that's a pretty toxic way to go about your life, right? And is really not what art is about, at all. I had it totally wrong. Once I started treating social media as more of a diary, that made a lot of progress for me. That helped a lot. And what do I mean by a diary? Well, your art is the journey of yourself, right? Your soul. And I think if you start treating social media you're not competing with anyone, but you're opening the door and inviting people in to observe your journey, then it doesn't become about other people anymore. That sort of melts away. And the message you start putting out there is more, this art is mine. I'm creating this for myself, but I'm opening the door and I'm letting you take a look through a window. Your art is for you, and everyone else is just invited to look. Take this video, for example. I've made this with zero expectations. I'm not trying to be better than anyone else. I am not trying to put other people down or be on top of the pack. I'm just making something because this is my thought process, and I thought I'd like to share something. And if 1 million people resonate with it, cool. If no one resonates with it, that's also cool. I don't really give a shit. I'm just putting myself out there and seeing what sticks. Now, that's not to say that you should ignore social media completely and say, F these algorithms. I do think over time that you should start learning, okay, what does my audience actually resonate with? What kind of stuff do they respond to that I can make realistically? If you want to be successful online, that's a whole different thing. It is fun though. It is fun. So if that's something you're into, then yeah, absolutely pursue that. But going into social media and whatever with zero expectations is really the healthiest way to do it. Another thing that took me a while to realize, if you only focus on chasing other people, the only thing you'll ever become is an imitation of them. You will never be them. You will never be a better version of them. You'll always be a copy. But the amazing part about that is that no matter how hard anyone else tries, no matter how much work they put into it, they will never be you. No one can ever be you. No one can ever make what you make. No one can be better at being you than you. And if what you make isn't perfect, that's okay. I think perfectionism is a trap. I think perfectionism is just procrastination in disguise. Your brain trying to tell you, oh, you shouldn't even try to make this because it's not going to be perfect, is really just your brain trying to protect you. It's a self-defense mechanism. It's trying to get you to stop doing that thing. And for a lot of people, including myself, this is why I didn't really pick up art until later in life. I was worried about it not being perfect. But that's the beauty of art. I think perfection is sterile. Perfection is boring, right? Perfection is predictable. Imperfection is raw. It's messy. It's not all there. It's beautiful. Another thing I used to tell myself was that I was too busy to make this stuff. I had a full-time job. I was working 60 hours a week. But the reality is you always have time. You always do. Me, for example, I don't have kids, right? I go home and I just sit on the couch and watch TV after a shift. So even though I'm working a lot of hours of my job, I was still able to eventually squeeze in 30 minutes a day when I realized it was important to me. I think if things are important to you, in most living scenarios, you're going to be able to make it work, even if it's like 5 minutes every single day. If it's that important to you, you will find time, and you should find time. I think that just like perfectionism, your brain telling yourself you're too busy is another trap. It's another way to protect itself, because the brain likes it when things are easy. The brain likes it when things are easy, right? So if everything I've said so far has failed to inspire you, I'll leave you with one more thought. If you don't do it, no one else will. If you don't make the things that are in your head, the things that are like begging to be let out, the things that feel like they're exploding out of your brain, there's no one else that's gonna do it. No one can tell your story except for you. And if you're stuck thinking, ooh, it's so hard, it's so difficult, I don't wanna learn all this stuff, I just wanna live an easy life. Well, I have another thing to say. No matter what you do in life, it's gonna be pretty miserable. If you choose to, not do anything with this gift that you've been given, and the gift is that feeling inside of you to create, if you choose to do nothing with it, then you're gonna be miserable. You're gonna be miserable by entropy, right? I know what that's like. I've carried that with me for a very long time. But you could also choose to do something with it. And that's also gonna be tough. That's also gonna be pretty miserable, because you're gonna be pushing yourself. You're gonna be doing stuff constantly that's outside of your comfort zone. That's uncomfortable. You're gonna be uncomfortable all the time. So when it boils down to those two options, you can either be miserable by entropy, or you can be miserable by mastery. And if you're just gonna be miserable letting that creativity waste away, man, in my opinion, you might as well just go for it. If it's gonna suck either way, you might as well suck and get good at something. I feel like I could have explained that better, but that's okay. I'm still learning how to talk in front of a camera and get my thoughts out. That's why I'm doing this whole thing. So that's it. No one can tell your story. And if you're a little older, you've got more of a story to tell. In the words of Megan Thee Stallion, in order to be heard, you need to speak, okay? Give yourself permission to be creative, all right? If you feel like this is connected with you, just leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know how this has made you feel. And if you have a similar story to me, right? Write it down in the comments. You don't know who's gonna read it and inspire them. You never know. I'm sharing my stories, but I want to hear your stories too. Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's it. We're done. I'm done. I'm out of here.